Liturgy comes from two Greek words, work and people. Liturgy is the work of the people for all of us. Our worship to God, which takes a certain shape as we're gathered together. Why do we have a liturgy in the first place? Well, if it's going to be something in which everyone's truly involved, there needs to be some coordination among us all. Traditional Anglican prayer has been called common prayer, not because it's cheap, but because we pray in common together. Second, the shape is meant to help us. We typically have a prayer of confession and assurance of our being forgiven. The idea is to get rid of all the junk which damages our lives, so we can focus more clearly on our relationship with God through Jesus Christ. In the offices, we alternate between hearing the Bible read and responding in praise with canticles. The sermon comes after the Bible message is proclaimed, and typically is to help understand the message. So regardless of which book we use, there's a shape to our worship. Anglicans do not have a pope or a magisterium or a strict set of principles like the Augsburg Confession for Lutherans or the Westminster Confession for Presbyterians. Instead, we've said, if you want to know what we believe, see how we pray together. That's partly the reason why liturgical change has been important for Anglicans. I want to speak very briefly about the overall principles and then how to use the Book of Common Prayer and the Book of Alternative Services in particular. As I'm sure we're aware, before the 16th century Reformation, services in English were in Latin. As part of the overall process of reform, various editions of the Book of Common Prayer were introduced, 1549, 1552, 1559, and after the use of the prayer book was suppressed during the English Civil War, an updated version of the BCP was introduced in 1662. The idea was to have a service in English, consistent with the gospel revealed through the Bible, consistent with the overall teachings of the early church. The use of the Book of Common Prayer has extended far beyond what its original architects could have imagined. Today it remains the official authorized liturgical standard through most of the Anglican Communion, including Canada. As English missionary work extended in other parts of the world, and as traders traveled and settled, Anglican parishes and eventually dioceses developed, using the 1662 BCP or something very like it worldwide. However, as we're aware, that changes in the last century. First, language itself evolves over time. Second, we now know somewhat more about liturgies in the first few centuries and in the Eastern churches than Archbishop Cranmer, the chief architect of the Book of Common Prayer, and his contemporaries would have known. So changes in language and revived academic interest in early church worship began to influence liturgical change. It started first among German Roman Catholic monasteries in the 1930s and 40s. And it began to have an impact on some Anglican scholars by the 1940s. By the 1958 Lambeth Conference, alternatives to the Book of Common Prayer were envisioned. Our Canadian Book of Common Prayer, still part of the BCP family, was introduced for full use in 1962. By 1971, the Canadian General Synod passed a motion providing for alternatives to the BCP to be developed. Some of us remember the liturgies on stiff poster board, which were used in some family services in the 1970s. These were followed by the Third Canadian Order in 1981 and the Book of Alternative Services in 1985. The introduction of the BAS did not always go smoothly. It tended to be the case that the further east in the country of Canada one went, the more the introduction of the BAS was a difficult transition. Some of this was pastoral issues in parishes around change, but there were also genuine theological questions about changes in the then new book. Remember, for Anglicans, our worship is closely identified with our identity. In most parishes, the use of the BAS now predominates, although the BCP is still periodically used in a majority of parishes in this diocese. And we anticipate further liturgical revisions in our future. Now I'll move from an overview to some practical comments about how to use the books. I have 4 key points. 1, the rubrics, those small instructions printed in the BCP and the BAS, provide a general guide. 2nd, we should be mindful of local parish customs. 3rd, our worship is about our praying together. It's less about a formula than it is fostering a relationship with our living God. And 4th, leading worship improves with practice. We tend to be less stiff with practice and more engaging. A general note, when we are lay people or a deacon leading the liturgy, we are praying with the people. A priest prays on behalf of the people. After the prayer of confession in the BAS morning or evening prayer, use our in the assurance of pardon which follows. For the BCP, use the collect for Trinity 21, Trinity 24, or perhaps the prayer for pardon through the cross, which follows the compline service. Also in the BCP offices, the priest stands after the shorter record of the Lord's Prayer. A lay reader traditionally would not stand. Most parishes in this diocese use the Revised Common Lectionary to be read through the Bible. If your parish uses the older BCP lectionary, I suggest you use McCausland's Order of Divine Service or get instruction from your rector about how to find the passages and when to use them. For the Eucharist, the order of Sunday readings is typically the Old Testament, Psalm, New Testament letter, and then the Gospel reading, generally with a hymn before it. In a few parishes, the Psalm is used as a sort of gradual before the Gospel is read. For instance, on a weekday communion service. According to parish custom, the lay reader may serve at communion, lead the prayers of the people, assist with readings, administer the chalice, and occasionally preach. During the Eucharist, the priest may look to the lay reader to prepare to offer the invitation to confession, the summary of the law, and other places in the liturgy. In morning prayer, Psalm 95, or the first 7 verses of Psalm 95, is the traditional opening canticle. Generally, one alternates between a proclamation of the word and a canticle of praise. For example, Psalm 95, Old Testament reading, Psalm, New Testament epistle reading, canticle, Gospel reading. In the BAS, the sermon immediately follows the Bible readings. In the BCP, the sermon is preached either at the end of the service or following the third collect. This is a very quick overview, and I hope a helpful introduction. Share the good news of God's love and forgiveness shown in Jesus Christ. God bless.